It's -20. You're outside. There's no wall between you and the wind, no door to close behind you, and the sun went down 5 hours ago. Today, winter is a dial on the wall. It's a coat stitched by a machine in another country and food grown in a hemisphere where it's currently summer. Take all of that away, and you are one of the worst built animals on this planet for cold. No fur worth mentioning, no fat layer, no burrow, a tropical body that starts failing at temperatures a squirrel sleeps straight through. And humans walked into the coldest places on Earth anyway, on purpose. They raised children through ice age winters that would kill you in an afternoon. By the end of this, you'll know exactly how. The clothes, the fat, the fire, the houses built out of dead mammoths. And you'll know the one part researchers are still fighting about, because there is a serious argument that some of your ancestors got through winter by doing something no human is supposed to be able to do. Let's start with your body. Because before any of the survival stuff makes sense, you need to see how badly designed you are for this. Get this wrong and nothing else in the video will land properly, because almost everyone thinks cold kills you the way a knife does. It doesn't. Tension. Your core sits at about 37 degrees. Drop it to 35 and you're hypothermic. That's a 2-degree margin for the whole system. Naked, with no wind and no wet, you're comfortable at around 27 degrees Celsius. That's your factory setting. Anything below that and your body starts paying to stay alive. First, it shuts down blood flow to your hands and feet. Then it shivers, and shivering is just muscle-burning fuel to make heat. Add water, and it gets much worse, because water pulls heat out of you around 25 times faster than air does. So a body in winter is running a deficit every single hour. Awake, asleep, doing nothing at all. Which means winter was never really a temperature problem. It was a calorie problem. Everything ancient humans built, wore, hunted, and stored was an answer to that one equation. Get more energy in than the cold takes out. In 2011, archaeologists Will Robrooks and Paula Villa published a review of every early European site claiming evidence of fire, and the result broke the obvious answer to this whole question. Because if the campfire is how humans handled winter, the dates have to line up. They don't. Humans were in Europe early. At Atapuerca in northern Spain, there are stone tools and human remains going back around 800,000 years, and older material below that. Fire is older still. Wonderwork Cave in South Africa has burnt bone and ash roughly 1 million years old, described by Francesco Berna of Boston University in 2012. But there's a difference between fire happening and fire being on tap every night. Robrooks and Villa were looking for the second one: habitual, routine, everyday fire. And in Europe, it doesn't appear consistently in the record until somewhere around 300,000 to 400,000 years ago. Do the subtraction. That's hundreds of thousands of years of European winters with humans in them and no reliable fire. We don't fully know how they managed it. That's the honest position. The best answers we have are unglamorous. Keep moving, keep the group tight, sleep packed together, live off meat and marrow, and stay in caves that hold yesterday's warmth. So fire wasn't the thing that got humans into the cold. It was the thing that let them stop running from it. Let's talk about clothes, because fire gets you through a night, and clothing is what gets you through a day. And there's an obvious problem with studying it. Animal skin rots. Nothing survives. So for a long time, nobody could put a date on the single most important cold technology humans ever made. Then researchers dated it using lice. In 2003, Ralph Kittler, Manfred Kayser, and Mark Stoneking at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology looked at the body louse. It's a separate creature from the head louse, and it doesn't live on you. It lives in your clothing and comes out to feed. Which means it could not have existed before clothing did. Date the split between the two species, and you've dated the invention. Their estimate came out around 70,000 years ago. Later work by the same lab pushed it back further, to at least 83,000 and possibly much earlier. Every time you get dressed, you're wearing the reason a parasite exists, not the legacy anyone was going for. But a hide thrown over your shoulders is still a gap with a draft coming through it. The real jump is tailoring, and tailoring needs a needle with a hole in it. The oldest we have is from Denisova Cave in Siberia, around 50,000 years old, bone, polished, with a drilled eye. And then there's sun gear, in Russia, about 34,000 years ago. 2 children buried with roughly 10,000 mammoth ivory beads between them. The clothing is long gone, but the beads stayed exactly where they were sewn. Rows across the chest, down the arms, around the ankles, a cap of them across the skull. So we can see Ice Age winter clothing without having a single scrap of it. Fitted jackets, trousers, hoods, footwear. Ian Gilligan at the University of Sydney has spent years arguing that this is the precondition for everything that follows. Without sealed, layered, tailored clothing, the high latitudes are simply closed. So the eye needle didn't just improve what people wore, it opened the map.
Now, here's the part nobody talks about. In deep winter, the most dangerous thing you could eat was lean meat. Not spoiled meat, not the wrong plant, a clean, fresh cut of muscle from an animal you killed yourself. Get this wrong, and you starve to death with a full stomach, which is exactly what happened to people who didn't know it. Quick thing, and it's related. Every video here runs on the same idea, that the questions you never bothered to look up have better answers than the ones you did. If that's your sort of thing, subscribing is how the next one finds you. Anyway, lean meat. Your liver can only process so much protein at once, Push past roughly a third of your calories coming from protein, and the waste products build up faster than you can clear them. You get weak, you get sick, and you can die within weeks while eating every day. Arctic explorers ran into this hard enough to name it. Vilhjalmur Stephenson called it rabbit starvation after the animal that does it to you fastest. Now, put that next to a real winter. By February, every animal on the landscape has burned through its own fat reserves. The reindeer is lean, the horse is lean. The thing you spent 3 days tracking is a bundle of protein with almost no fuel in it. So the whole hunt reorganizes around one substance, not meat, fat. In 2025, a team led by Lutz Kindler and Will Robrooks published what they found at Neumark Nord in Germany, at a site dated to around 125,000 years ago. Neanderthals had been hauling carcasses to one spot by a lake, more than 170 large animals, and they weren't butchering them there. They were smashing the bones into small fragments and boiling them so the grease would rise and could be skimmed off the top. That's not a meal, that's a production line, running 125,000 years ago for the one nutrient winter takes away. So you've got fire, clothing, and fat. What you don't have is a wall. And on the Mammoth steppe, which is where a lot of this happened, there is one detail that makes shelter almost impossible. There are barely any trees. You can't build a hut out of a landscape with no wood in it, and a night outside in that place is not survivable. So what do you build with? In 2020, Alexander Pryor at the University of Exeter published work on a site called Kostenki 11 in Russia, dating to around 25,000 years ago. What his team was excavating was a circle roughly 12.5 meters across, built from the bones of at least 60 mammoths, skulls set into the base, jawbones stacked in courses. 60 mammoths, for one structure. Nobody was building a spare. Kostenki isn't alone. At Mesorik in Ukraine, around 15,000 years ago, there are several of them, with tusks arched over the entrances. And inside Kostenki 11, they found charred wood, burnt bone, and charred plant remains. So there was fire in there, and there was food being processed that wasn't meat. We don't know whether these mammoths were hunted or whether the bones were collected from animals that died on their own. Both arguments are still live, and there's no clean answer yet. What we can say is what the animal was to them. The mammoth was the meat, the fat, the fuel, the walls, and the roof. One species doing the entire job of a hardware shop. Now, here's the strangest idea in any of this, and it comes from serious people with a real paper. It concerns a site called Cima de los Huesos in the Atapuerca Hills in Spain, a shaft in a cave system holding the remains of at least 28 individuals around 430,000 years old. It's one of the richest collections of early human bone anywhere on Earth, and if the reading of it is correct, it changes what your ancestors physically were. In 2020, Antonis Bartziocas and Juan Luis Arzuaga looked at the damage inside those bones. Bone keeps a record. When growth stops and restarts, it leaves a line. When the body starts cannibalizing its own skeleton for minerals, that leaves marks too. The Cima bones are full of both, and the pattern is seasonal. Stop, start, stop, start. Their argument was that this matches what you see in animals that hibernate, and the caves around Atapuerca were full of cave bears who were doing exactly that, in the same landscape, in the same winters. The proposal is that these humans were spending part of every year in a state of deep metabolic slowdown, sleeping through the worst of it, in the dark, underground. Most researchers think they're wrong. The pushback was immediate, and the alternative explanations are strong ones. Chronic malnutrition, vitamin D deficiency, disease. The idea has not been accepted. But look at what both sides agree on. Nobody disputes that those bones record a body that repeatedly stopped growing and started again on a seasonal cycle. Whether they slept through winter or suffered through it, winter got inside their skeletons and wrote itself down. They sewed the layers that held the heat in. They boiled the bones that put the fat back in their bodies. They stacked the biggest animal on Earth into a wall. They carried summer into winter and lived off it until spring. And every one of them spent months of every year with the same figure running quietly underneath everything else. How many days of food is left? You have never once had that figure. Winter, for you, is a coat and a slightly worse heating bill. It was abolished so recently and so completely that we don't really have a word for what it used to be. But some of the machinery is still in you. The shiver, the way your fingers go cold before anything else does, because your body is quietly triaging, protecting the parts that keep you alive and writing off the parts that don't. That's a decision your species has been making for 500,000 years. It's still being made. In a heated room, in a t-shirt, in you,